All right, welcome to Pro Archery Ballistics, the Android version. This is going to be an app overview here. We're going to go through all the features, settings, and things you can do in this application. So the first page you're going to come into when you purchase a subscription is the input page. At the very top, we have load setup buttons. You can tap these buttons to load the 3 setup options we have built into Android. Future updates, we're going to have a list here where you can add as many builds as you want. Currently, we got 3 supported for Android. Load your setup top. You got all these fields. Name your build, whatever you want to name it. Velocity of your arrow, arrow mass, outside diameter, arrow length, number of fletchings, the fletch length, the fletch height, and the fletch angle. Some of these variables are not super sensitive to a specific setup, but the more accurate your information, the better your data will be. At the bottom, we have Save Setup buttons. This saves the inputted data in these columns to the buttons above. It does not matter which setup you are on. You can save the data to any of the setups of your choice. So if you have setup 1, you refilled it out and you didn't mean to, just save it to setup 2, reload setup 1, so you just toggle back and forth, and it'll be there. At the bottom, there's a calculate button. This runs the algorithm to calculate the ballistics values of your setup. It'll give you a little prompt saying the calculation has been updated. And then from there, we can go to the various other pages of the app. On the table page at the bottom, there's a couple selections we have, and I'm going to explain what this page is all about. So the target distance, or zero distance up here, is the distance that we're considering looking at. So let's say we have a target at 60 yards. English units or metric units. So if you select metric, of course, it'll be 60 meters instead of 60 yards. In the columns of data, we can look at velocity, drop, energy, momentum, and time to target. Drop being one of the best features for information. Now, we have to calculate our ballistic values and calculate our drop to display information in the table. The reason we do this is so we're not harnessing energy from your phone or memory, making things slow down. So we're trying to keep it as efficient as possible so that you don't have any slow or sluggish spots. So as above, I selected 60 yards, and we see it 0, so we are hitting 60 yards right here. This drop column is the arrow path in inches from your bow at 0 to 60 yards. It climbs to 29 inches and drops back into 60 yards. This happens to be we're on setup 3. So this is for setup 3, 250 feet per second arrow, 600 grains, just what was in the data there. Again, we can look at energy out to 140 yards. We can look at momentum. We can look at time to target in any column that you want. Moving on, we're going to skip over the shoot for calculator for now. We're going to go to sight tapes. One of the primary reasons to use this application is to build custom sight tapes for your equipment. We currently support any vertical rail. This is your black gold, your UV slider, Excel. Pin gaps on your sight is also a vertical rail. CBE products that have a vertical rail, the Swift rail, or other similar sights. We support all of Spot Hog's offerings, the HHA Optimizer, the HHA Tetra, and the HHA Optimizer Lite. I need to correct some of that there. Trophy Ridge Swift, the round knob, and dialed proof and Arxos. Hope I said their site correctly for dialed. Again, we can select English or metric, depending on what we want our scale to. We have a button here that toggles blue is on and gray is off. This will input a 5-yard mark on our sight tape. We have a 3-step process here to printing and saving sight tapes. Step 1 updates the model. Step 2 calculates the data, calculates the sight tape based on your inputted data here, such as sight radius, peep to arrow, and so on. The third button, step 3, brings you to our print page. This is the data that will be printed or will be saved to be printed, and we can go from there. To get back to the sight tapes page, just click on the sight tapes at the bottom. We have another button above the sight tapes that is specific for the D30 label printer, as many have requested. This will produce an image that is the exact size needed. It uses the image of the sight tape you see on screen here and creates it specifically for the D30 label printer to prevent any issues with resizing or scaling or cropping as needed. The on-screen scale correction, this is the most important feature to get correct on your device. You want to make sure from red line to red line that it measures 1 inch in this square. You can either measure vertically or you can measure horizontally. Get that as exact as possible. Sight radius. This is from your pins to the center of your peep. Peep to arrow. This is from the center of your arrow to the center of your peep. And both of these measurements are done while the arrow is at full draw in the bow. Use a draw board for the safest. If you don't have a draw board, find a friend. Just be very safe when you do it. Make sure you keep your finger off the trigger. You can customize various color options here on the sight tape. And depending on what printer you're using, will depend on if it prints monochrome or color. X value you see here, this is a bore sighting type method to help get your tape aligned very close right out of the gate. So what you do here is you'll take a measurement with your arrow in the rest up position, so as it would be at full draw. You do not need the bow at full draw, you just simply need the rest to be where it would launch from the bow from. You then take a measurement from the center of that arrow shaft to the 60-yard pin. This should equal the X value on screen here. Once you've done that, you can then align the tape produced here with the 60-yard indicator. So if you have a 3-pin setup, you'll slide your sight down until the distance is 2.372 inches from the center of the arrow shaft to the center of your 60 pin. That corresponds to the indicator on your rail. Then take your sight tape, line up the 60-yard mark with that indicator, and apply the sight mark. This should get you very close, and especially on target at 60 yards, to just help align those tapes a little bit closer. All right, let's go to the advanced page. This is going to be under the More tab and Advanced. Advanced is another very critical feature of the app here. What we have in here is our density calculations, as well as a custom drag coefficient, should you need to change that. Some of the things that are affecting our drag, such as high helical, weaker shafts, or really high velocities with larger diameter arrows, can all increase our drag coefficient from the standard value. Elevation, there's 2 ways to calculate elevation or density, which is what we really care about in the application here. You can enter an elevation value, and this will calculate an average density for that elevation range. The better option is to calculate the density based on the current conditions. So this is the button, the 3rd button down. If we click this, it'll load another page. Top button we click to start getting our pressure readings from our mobile device. Enter our temperature, that's ambient temperature, and our dew point temperature. Dew point temperature is relative to humidity, but is a little bit better of a calculation than using the percentage of humidity. We can click this button here, and that'll take us back to our advanced page, and we see the density, the current density value that is being calculated is brought in. The bottom button will then save that density value, and it will use that density value for our sight tapes. If you're on the advanced page, the density value that is displayed is your sight in density, that is relative to your sight tape. This is important when you use the shoot for calculator, because the shoot for calculator, by this 2nd button at the bottom, sets the density for the shoot for calculator. This makes a comparison between your sight in density and the current density. For example, if you're at a TAC event and you're really high elevation, you can use this density of your current location relative to your sight in density to tell you what to shoot for. On the shoot for calculator, we do have an option for either sight marks or distance. Distance, you want to enter line of sight, not an angle compensation distance, but a line of sight distance, as well as a shot angle and a wind speed. You can select the wind angle in this button here. Once you've inputted those parameters, you will click the first button to update the shot values, and the second button will calculate your shoot for distance. So 40 yards line of sight, no angle is 40 yards at the same density. Yet we can do a 15-degree angle, update our values, and that's 39 yards. If we add in some wind drift of a 5-mile-an-hour wind coming from right to left at your 3 o'clock, that would be off of your right shoulder. We now have a 39-yard shot and a wind drift of 1/2 inch. And the wind would push the arrow to the left. Again, on the Shoot For calculator, we have the choice between English and metric conversion units here. Let's explore the More tab a little bit more. We have an arrow build comparison in here. There's a couple things you can use this for. You can compare two arrows and their energy, momentum at various distance. You can select the distance here, currently 5 to 70 yards for a comparison. You can also, if you have a known arrow velocity and a known arrow mass of your bow, and you want to know what the new velocity or new arrow mass will be, if you hold the energy constant, you can, let's say we know we shoot 290 feet per second with a 450 grain arrow. If I wanted to shoot an 800 grain arrow, calculate our comparison, we want our energy of the second column here to be equal to 84. So we're going to increase the velocity until we reach that number. So that's way too high. What's made 220, 86, getting close, a little bit lower, 219, very close. Let's try 217, 217. So our velocity for an 800 grain arrow should be about 217 feet per second. This is assuming the efficiency of the bow doesn't increase. For most modern compounds, they are nearly linear. There is some slight efficiency improvements when you go to a heavier grain arrow, but it is very slight. So at least you should be 217 feet per second on an 800 grain arrow if you were shooting 290 at 450 grains. We also have a sight mark table for those who like a table of your sight marks. This is more for our target archer audience. Again, you can enter your sight information. Sight radius, peep to arrow, sight inches. So this is inches per click of your sight. Every sight manufacturer will list this in either the packaging, the user manual, or on their website for their sight. Your sight mark 0 value, this is the value that is on your sight for the specific distance, the 0 distance that you select below, excuse me. So we are using one sight in mark. For example, a mark of 30 is equal to 40 yards, a shot distance. And then your clicks per sight mark, again, this is a manufacturer option here. You can get that information from their website or the packaging. This is the number of turns per mark on your sight. Once you then enter that information, it will be saved under each build number depending on which one you are in. So you can have 3 different sight, bow, arrow build combinations. Click to update your sight marks. You can save custom marks here. The custom mark column currently is just a corrected mark that you might, if you have noticed some differences that you're experiencing with the sight mark card here. Now let's get into notes. Here we go. We haven't talked about notes. Notes, this is just a never-ending stream of data that you can enter here, and you could type whatever you like. For example, hello all. Click to save the notes, and it'll be saved indefinitely as long as you keep the app and don't delete your data. Let's see, other features to know. On the Shoot For calculator here, we do have a toggle. So if you're shooting in downhill or an uphill angle, you'll toggle this here. Much of the data throughout the app, for example, the sight tape, if this X value reads 0, you want to make sure you update your values. If it reads 0, it means the program has refreshed. and it may not be accurate. So make sure that there is not a 0 value for the X to ensure you're using or referencing the correct site tape. When you close the application and reload, the data will be saved, your build data. However, your table, for example, if we come in here and load a new setup, the first thing you need to do is calculate ballistic values. As you notice, they all changed. They updated to the new build data. Every time you open the app, if you're going to reference this column, just make sure you click these two buttons first to make sure that it is correct and accurate and updated. Let's go over printing a little bit here. So we had, like I said, we have two options to print. You can click here to save print image for the D30 label printer. That will save an image that does go into the downloads folder. It also goes into here, into an image. For some reason, my phone likes to make it look with a black background, but it is a white background when you go to print. We can also find that information in our files folder, and we see it was just saved right now. If we go to print this information, we'll see it's not a black background, it is a full information. Now, this is designed to print on the label printer, not on a letter size piece of paper. So when you use this, you'll bring this into the Printmaster app. Create a new label. Bring in our site tape. We'll make sure that it is to the correct size. We'll rotate to put that in correctly, and we will scale it so that it is to the maximum extents allowed in the Printmaster app. This will print this site tape to the exact size that we need. Let's go back to the Pro Archery Ballistics app. Step 3 produces this page. We click to save the data, and from here we actually create a image that we'll see here that has our site tape information. It also has our build data and a few other information. This will be used if you choose to print. For example, I have my Canon printer here. Always make sure that you select a paper size. It's not online. A paper size of letter. And that will make sure that this image is the correct size needed. If letter size is selected, this will print to the correct image needed. On Android devices, if you'd like a PDF, you can save as PDF instead of a printer, and then you can generate this here, and we will save to our downloads folder just like so. And there's our PDF document right there. The file generated in Android is an image file for the site tapes data. It will print just the same. It will print correctly as long as you select letter size paper. As always, if you have any questions about Pro Archery Ballistics, you can always reach out to me at proarcheryballistics@gmail.com, Instagram at Pro Archery Ballistics, YouTube, Lucas Palmer Archery. And we are happy to help you with any questions you have, problems you may be experiencing, or if you just need a little extra help trying to figure out how to use the app. We appreciate your time. Have a good day.